My name is Jordan Ellis, and I'm 38 years old. I'm the governor of a state that once felt like it belonged to someone else, someone cleaner, someone born into power. But I wasn't born into it. I clawed my way toward it after being erased by the people who were supposed to know me best. When I was 19, my sister looked me straight in the eye and told me I was an embarrassment to the family. She said it without heat, like she was reading a fact from a report. A week later, my father changed the locks. My mother left a bag of my clothes on the porch. No note, no goodbye, just silence, heavy and final. They said I was reckless, that I brought shame to the family, but they never asked what happened. They never listened. I didn't post that video. I was the one violated. But to them, that didn't matter. What mattered was the name, their image, the legacy they were trying to protect, and I was no longer part of it. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I disappeared. Not because I was ashamed, but because I knew they'd never let me rise if they knew I had survived. I changed my name, cut my hair, worked jobs no one cared to notice, and quietly, slowly, I built something real. This isn't a story about revenge. I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here because the truth has weight, and when the people who gave you your name try to erase it, sometimes the only way to survive is to carve your own meaning into it. That's what I did. That's what this story is. I graduated the week before the video surfaced. No one came. I didn't even tell them the date. I crossed the stage in a borrowed robe, smiled for a photo no one would frame, and went home to a silent dinner where my father praised my sister's latest court appearance on the news and didn't ask me a single question. That house always smelled like furniture polish and control. Every Sunday, my dad sat at the head of the table like a general, his glass raised to honor or legacy or whatever name he wanted to protect that week. I used to sit near the end, eyes down, barely breathing loud enough to be noticed. I wasn't like them. I loved words, colors, ideas that didn't fit in tidy boxes. I studied philosophy. I painted. I once spent an entire summer mapping out every statue in the city just to understand what people choose to remember. But none of that mattered once the video hit the internet. It was a private moment, taken without my consent, leaked by someone who couldn't handle rejection. My face, my body, my voice stolen and passed around like gossip at a church potluck. It spread fast. And when Isabella, my sister, saw it, she didn't call me. She sent it to my father with one line: "You need to act before this gets worse." The night it exploded, dinner never happened. My father barged into my room with a fury I'd only seen once before, when he broke up a bar fight during his last year as sheriff. He didn't yell right away. He looked at me like I was a stranger who had just broken into his house. "You think we raised you for this," he said, "for the world to see you like that." I tried to explain. I choked on the words. I didn't post it. I didn't know he still had it. I was the one violated. But that didn't matter. I had violated the family, the name. He threw my diploma on the bed like it was a bill he refused to pay, said if I wanted to live like trash, I could do it without his name, without his roof, without his money. My mother stood in the hallway clutching her rosary. She didn't speak, didn't blink, wouldn't even look at me. I turned to Isabella, still hoping for a flicker of grace, a thread of sisterhood. She didn't move. Hands folded neatly, face blank, no apology, no shame. Just a cold calm that told me I'd already been erased in her mind. I packed in silence, a few clothes, my journals, sketchbooks, the red backpack I'd had since freshman year. The sunlight through the blinds sliced the room into stripes, half light, half dark, like the house couldn't decide what I was anymore. When I stepped into the living room, my father was waiting. He placed my debit card on the table like he was granting me one final courtesy. "Don't call, don't write." I nodded. I didn't say goodbye. My mother watched through the curtain as I stepped into the dusk. She didn't wave, she didn't cry. She just watched like I was a storm she hoped would pass quickly without breaking the windows. The first night I slept in my friend's car. The third night her patience ran out. By day 7, I was on a Greyhound bus heading north, destination uncertain. Denver maybe, or just anywhere that didn't remember my name. On the second night of that ride, somewhere outside Santa Fe, I lit a match under a bridge and burned the only notebook I had from home. It held birthdays, old recipes, little notes my mom used to sneak into my lunch. I tore them page by page, watched the fire eat them slow. I didn't cry. I didn't pray. I just stared at the flames and whispered, the only thing I had left, I've got nothing to lose. So I'll start with what's left of me. The bus smelled like old vinyl and anxiety. Every seat creaked. Every cough sounded like a threat. I stared out the window as the miles stretched into nothing. Somewhere in New Mexico, the sun sank without ceremony, turning the sky the color of bruises. I hadn't eaten since morning. My last $20 were tucked in a sock. I wasn't sure what I was saving it for. When the driver pulled off near Santa Fe for a rest stop, I didn't follow the others. I slipped down a dirt embankment behind the gas station, red dust sticking to my sneakers. There was a low bridge, rusted and cracked, like the world had forgotten it existed. I sat beneath it, pulled out my journal, and let the silence press in. Pages filled with birthdays notes from my mom, recipes scrawled in her narrow handwriting. My childhood folded into a few faded sheets. I lit a match. The flame caught slow, then grew. It made a sound like someone sighing. I fed the journal to it page by page, watching pieces curl and lift into the air like they wanted to fly but didn't know how. The heat was small but steady. I didn't cry. I didn't look away. That journal had been mine since I was 12, and now it was ash. The bus engine idled in the distance. A voice called last boarding. I didn't move right away. My hands smelled like smoke and ink. I looked up at the sky, empty and wide. Then I whispered it, not to anyone, just into the space between breaths. I've got nothing to lose, so I'll start with what's left of me. Oregon was gray in a way that settled into your skin. The kind of gray that didn't care who you used to be. I found a room the size of a closet in a rundown building with peeling paint and a heater that coughed more than it worked. My mattress sat on the floor next to a cracked mirror and a window that never quite shut. I worked mornings at a diner, afternoons cleaning a clinic, nights inputting data for a temp agency that didn't ask questions. No one knew my last name. I barely used my first. I stopped telling stories about where I came from. Every time someone asked, I just smiled and said I moved for the weather. I cut my hair one morning without thinking, watched it fall like something I didn't need anymore. On weekends, I painted. Not for anyone else, just me, cheap brushes dipped in dollar store colors. One night, I made something that looked like a shadow falling inward. I hung it behind a curtain where no one would see it. That felt right. I wasn't rebuilding, not yet. I was disappearing, reshaping into someone no one could touch. A ghost in my own life. Quiet, watchful, still breathing. It was just after 2 a.m. on a Tuesday when I heard the shouting. I was mopping the hallway near the back entrance of the clinic when the voices cut through the silence. A woman was standing there, small, shaking, clutching her daughter tight as an officer held out a stack of papers and barked at her in Spanish. I didn't plan it. I didn't think. I stepped forward before my fear could stop me. "She's not signing that," I said, and the officer turned, caught off guard. He asked who I was. I didn't give him an answer. I just said the forms were outdated, legally invalid, and needed to be reprocessed. It was a bluff, but it landed. He hesitated, muttered something under his breath, then left. The woman started crying softly into her daughter's jacket. I didn't stay long. I told her she was okay for now, then walked back to my mop like nothing had happened. Later that week, I got called into the admin office. I thought it was the end. Instead, I found a man named Rafael Delgado waiting. He ran a nonprofit that supported undocumented families. He had heard what I did. He didn't ask why, just offered me a job. Not cleaning, not hiding. A real job starting small, translating documents, running errands, watching learning. I said yes, before I let myself think of a reason to say no. It felt like something cracked open inside me. Not loud, just a shift, a direction, something I hadn't felt in a long time, a place to belong even if only for a minute. I started with errands. Coffee runs, supply orders, stapling outreach packets in the back room, while others held meetings I wasn't invited to. But I listened. Always listening. I stayed late to organize case files, read through policy briefs, after hours highlighted terms I didn't understand, and looked them up before bed. On Saturdays, I sat in the back row at city council meetings. I didn't speak. I watched how people moved power around the room. I saw who interrupted, who hesitated, who was ignored. I took online law courses and secret wrote grants with shaky confidence until one finally got approved. It was small, but it funded housing for 4 families. That's when they started asking what I thought. I never raised my voice. I just knew what I was talking about. I brought calm into rooms that usually ran on panic. Over time, I became the person they turned to for clarity. When someone didn't show up, I filled the gap. When something broke, I fixed it without being asked. One afternoon, an intern asked why I worked so hard. I was wiping down a whiteboard no one had used in weeks. I paused, told him I didn't have a family to go back to. So I was building one where I might finally belong. He didn't say much after that, just nodded and went back to sorting flyers. Nothing about what I was doing felt heroic. It just felt necessary, like breathing, like refusing to vanish. It was a cold Monday morning when I walked through the side door of the courthouse I once ran from. No entourage, no press. Just me in a gray coat and sunglasses slipping into the last row before anyone could turn around. The courtroom felt smaller than I remembered, sterile, packed with reporters, lawyers, officials I'd once seen in headlines. At the front sat my sister, perfectly dressed posture, crisp hands folded like a statue sculpted for appearances. My father was next to her, jaw set like stone. My mother beside him, clutching her rosary with white-knuckled fingers. I didn't come to speak. I didn't come to be seen. But as the judge entered and scanned the room, her eyes landed on me. She paused, squinted. Then her voice broke through the hush like a crack of thunder. "Is that Jordan Reese, the governor?" Every head turned at once. Gasps, murmurs, the clatter of pens dropping. My sister's face drained of color. My father leaned forward, squinting, like he wasn't sure I was real. My mother's lips parted, but no sound came out. I didn't flinch. I didn't wave. I didn't blink. I just sat there, still, whole, present in a way they never allowed me to be. The judge regained her composure and called the court to order, but the air never settled after that. Every few minutes, someone glanced back at me like I was a ghost made flesh, a secret too big to stay buried. And I said nothing. I didn't need to. My presence was enough. My name had once been a source of shame in that room. Now it filled it, quietly, unshakably, fully mine. The day after the hearing, my face was everywhere. News anchors ran old footage like they'd been waiting for it. Talk shows brought out my ex, polished and remorseful, recounting our past like a performance. My staff flooded my inbox with damage reports. They wanted a statement, a strategy, a shield. I gave them one line: let them look. "I've survived being seen before." That quote ran hotter than the scandal itself. It was on t-shirts, tweets, even carved into the sidewalk, in front of a bookstore downtown. A few nights later, my father called. Not to ask how I was, not to apologize. He warned me to stay out of the family's name, said the past should stay buried. I listened, then I said he didn't have to worry. I wasn't dragging the name. I'd already replaced it. My mother had a mild stroke a week after. My assistant told me she was in the hospital. I went, quietly, no cameras, no flowers, just me and a small painting I had done years ago. A woman standing alone in a field, her face turned away. I left it on the bedside table and didn't wait for her to wake up. I walked out without looking back. Some stories don't end with applause, some just end. And that was enough. The invitation came by email, short, polite, typed like a stranger trying to sound warm. Sunday dinner, just family, a chance to reconnect. I read it twice before deleting it. Then I pulled it back from the trash and typed a one-word reply. Fine. The house hadn't changed much. Same shutters, same mailbox, same porch light that flickered when the wind hit right. Inside, the air smelled like baked ham and something floral, like they were trying too hard to make it feel like before. My father greeted me at the door with a firm handshake, not a hug. My mother hovered awkward, like she wanted to embrace me but didn't know the steps anymore. My sister smiled too wide, as if rehearsing warmth. We sat, we passed dishes. They asked about my work, not too deep, not too curious. My sister spoke first, saying she was sorry for how things happened. Not for what she did, just how it all went. She looked proud of herself for saying it. My mother reached across the table and said she needed help. Something legal, something about her church losing funding. Her eyes softened. Her voice cracked just right. My father, ever composed, thanked me for coming. Said it meant a lot. Said the family was stronger when it stood together. I could see him trying to play patriarch again. Reclaim control by pretending he never lost it. I listened, I nodded, I let them talk. Then I put my fork down slow and steady. I looked at each of them one by one, not angry, just clear. I kept your name, but I built my life without you in it. The words sat heavy in the room. My sister dropped her gaze. My mother looked like she might cry. My father's face hardened, but he said nothing. I stood, pushed in my chair, and walked to the door. No one followed, no one called out. That silence was the truest thing they ever gave me, and I took it with me like a key I'd been holding my whole life. One that finally opened the door to something real. It started with an email. No sender, just a link. I didn't click it. I already knew what it was. A grainy screenshot confirmed it. The old video recirculated sharper now, faster to share. One headline called it "The Scandal That Never Died." My staff found more: threads on dark forums, cropped images, edited voice notes stitched out of context. The attacks weren't clumsy. They were surgical, targeted, timed. My calendar had just opened for a legislative push. My team was on edge. They wanted to tighten security pause media. I told them no. We go forward. That week, I stood before the press and introduced the Justice Witness Protection Bill, a policy for victims of digital exposure, of coerced silence, of weaponized memory. It included new protections for whistleblowers and revenge porn survivors. I named it without apology. I gave it the weight it deserved. In my speech, I didn't dodge the past. I named it, held it up like a blade dulled from overuse. I said, I know what it's like to be punished for what someone else stole from you. I said, shame only wins if we carry it for them. Cameras flashed. My voice didn't shake. I saw one reporter glance at his phone, no doubt watching the leaked video play in another tab. I stared straight through him. My father called that night, said nothing at first, just breathed, then asked if I knew what I was doing. I told him yes, more than I ever have. The next morning, the bill trended at #1. Survivors from across the country sent letters: a teacher, a nurse, a teenage boy who thought he was alone. They didn't care about the past. They cared that someone stood in it without flinching. That's how you take back power, not with silence, not with shame, but by rewriting the rules they once used to break you. One word, one law, one truth at a time. She came without warning. My assistant knocked once, unsure, then stepped aside as Isabella walked through the door like it still belonged to her. She didn't look smug this time, just tired, like someone who had run out of performances. We sat in my office, the door closed, the room too quiet. She didn't ask how I was, didn't touch the water glass I slid toward her. She said she'd come to tell the truth, not fix anything. Then she looked me in the eye and said she used to want my life, my voice, my light. That jealousy made her cruel. I didn't flinch. I let her speak. She said it wasn't about the video, not really. It was about feeling small next to me, always being second even when they said she was first. I stayed silent, let the air settle, let her feel the weight of it. When she finally stopped talking, I leaned back slow and steady. I told her I didn't need her apology, not because I had forgiven her, but because I had lived through what she thought would break me. Then I said the one thing I'd held in my chest for almost 2 decades. You didn't destroy me. You just forgot I existed. And when someone's forgotten long enough, they learn how to become unforgettable. She didn't cry. I think she wanted to. I think she thought that would make it easier to bear. But I stood up, walked her to the door, opened it. She paused like she might say something else, then didn't. That was the last time we spoke. And I was okay with that. Some stories don't need a second act. Some just need to end where the silence finally makes sense. The ballroom was quiet before I spoke. Rows of chairs filled with people who knew the price of silence: nurses, teachers, clerks, survivors in suits and sneakers, faces that had learned how to hold still and keep going. I stood behind the podium not as a daughter, not even as a governor. I stood as someone who had once been erased and refused to stay gone. My mother sat in the 3rd row, not in the front, not backstage, just quietly present. Her hands clasped tight in her lap, her eyes locked on mine. I took a breath and began. I spoke about family, but not the kind that shows up in Christmas cards. I spoke about the kind that wounds in silence, the kind that teaches shame as tradition, that demands loyalty at the cost of self. Then I introduced the Public Kinship Act, a policy that would protect workers who sever ties with abusive or manipulative relatives. It would allow legal boundaries to be respected in matters of housing benefits, visitation, and beyond. It would let people say no and still be whole. The room didn't erupt. It held its breath. There was something sacred in that pause, a shared knowing, 1,000 unspoken stories being named without needing to be told. I said what I had come to believe through years of learning how to live. That silence should not be the price of belonging. That family is not who you're born to. It's who sees you, stays with you, lets you grow without fear. After the applause, I stepped down. I didn't look for my mother. I didn't need to. I had said what I came to say, and in that moment, I stood in everything I had fought to become. No longer a ghost, no longer a secret. Just a woman who broke the rules they said were sacred and rewrote them in her name. The room was small, low-ceilinged, filled with the soft hum of folding chairs and distant radiator clinks. I had just finished speaking. Nothing political, just a talk on dignity, survival, and what it means to live without asking permission. As people clapped and gathered their coats, I saw him, standing in the back near the exit. Same posture, same shoulders, just older now. My father. He waited until the crowd thinned, then stepped forward. Not close, just enough. He didn't say sorry, he didn't say much. Just that he saw me now, all of me. That was it. I nodded once. Not in forgiveness, not in invitation, just acknowledgement. Like recognizing a storm has finally passed, even if it left scars. Then I stepped outside. The snow had started, thin flakes drifting down like the sky was exhaling. I watched them fall slow and quiet, landing on my sleeves without melting. Some battles don't end in victory, they end in peace. And peace, when you've lived without it long enough, feels like a revolution.